What does success mean? It's to love and be loved. It's to inspire and be inspired. It's to motivate and be motivated. It's to support and be supported. It's to help and be helped. Basically, what we're trying to say is, like, can society model a way of being vulnerable and showing what's going on the inside rather than just exposing what we do on the outside? I suppose the challenge to humanity is, how do you show vulnerability as a strength and a courage and something to be celebrated? It's come from two major events in my life, and I've only recently got more and more comfortable with sharing the first one I'm about to tell you. My father left me when I was 2, and I walked out of my room and then saw my brother in the corridor. We both were looking at each other going, "Oh, where's mummy?" And we walked into her room, and she passed away in her sleep. And that takes me to, like, the second, I suppose, major event that shaped me who I am today. And that was, and I was given a diagnosis of a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and a very rare autoimmune disease. This was my ask for help boot camp, because I was at my most helpless. But you don't realise you've got 2 lives until your second life begins. So you can get the fulfillment flywheel going, but if you can be brave, you can be the catalyst. Not only by offering help, but by asking for it.
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. Through sharing the stories of our guests, I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey. Okay, I'm just going to say something about one of our sponsors, Riverval. The world of cars, vans and minibuses is often a pain point for many of us. The hassle of finding the right vehicle, let alone looking after it, are all more things to add to our lists as busy people. Riverval's mission is to make motoring manageable, and that's why they provide leasing, purchasing, servicing and vehicle management. So whether you have one family car or a fleet of vans for your business, Riverval are your trusted vehicle supplier. Visit www.riverval.co.uk. Okay, let's jump back to the podcast. Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Here I am with the man who asks for help and gives the gift of help, right? The gift of help, Ashley Usiskin. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I'm super excited to be here. Looking forward to it. Really magical conversation.
I want to, just before we kick off, I want to talk about our first magical conversation. I love the we got introduced by a mutual friend, right? And then you reached out to me and said, "Oh, look, we've not met. Let's jump on when we do. Can I ask you some questions in a different?" And honestly, it was one of the best ways to get to know someone, right? What a brilliant way to start a relationship.
I remember it well. It was, we just been talking about it, how it was that first moment of, felt like connection, openness, vulnerability. Yeah, it was special.
It was. It really was. Well, look, mate, I'm excited to get into this, and let's crack on, and we're jumping as we always do with the big question, right? How do you define success? What's it mean to you?
Yeah, I love the question. In the spirit of, I don't have an immediate answer, so I just want to go with feel. And there's a sense of success for me is connection, is a sense of how proud you are of yourself. And that's also in line with this whole spirit of what comes alive for me is also this spirit of like how you live each day. And you get to the end of each day, and can you feel fulfilled? Can you feel lit up? Can you feel proud? And then trying to go a little bit deeper, I was going, well, what does that mean? And I did have some thoughts on this at 4 o'clock this morning because I knew this question was coming. So clearly something was bubbling away, and I had these lovely thoughts, and I'm just going to let them roll. What does success mean? It's to love and be loved. It's to inspire and be inspired. It's to motivate and be motivated. It's to support and be supported. It's to help and be helped. And looking at this, and you go, what is that? That's a sense of reciprocity, this sense of mutual, it's not all about you, it's all about us. And I would then try and wrap it up, although obviously we could have a conversation for hours on this, it's a feeling for me. Success is a feeling. So it's obviously countercultural. It's not a metric of money or likes or followers. It's a feeling. So I think it's a feeling of also, I'll continue the theme of to accept yourself and accept other people, to fulfill yourself and help fulfill others. So yeah, it's a feeling of for yourself and those around you.
Love that. Is that if I was to have asked you that question 20 years ago, what would your answer have been then?
That's another brilliant question. 20 years ago, so I would have been literally 32, and I was in Sydney at the time. So if I reflect back to that time, I can say it, I suppose, shamelessly, that was a period of my time that was very selfish. I was in Sydney, an amazing city, beautiful, but I also knew at the time then that it had a sort of a bit of a skin deep vibe about it. So at that time, I don't think I was so sure of myself. So I was quite easily influenced. So couldn't help but be influenced by the fact that success was, at that time for me, looked like the beautiful house with a sea view, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the classic materialistic metrics. But it's interesting now, even now I can reflect, looking back, there was an unease about that. So it's really fascinating that just through the theme of your question, I've been on this journey, probably subconsciously, of trying to reconcile exactly the answer to your first question. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to reflect on that as how I've gone through my life. And maybe we'll get to it. I don't think I've ever felt easy with the cultural, societal, cliche definition of success. I think there's always been something that I've felt uneasy about or even rejected.
Why do you think that is? Is that I'll tell you what I'd be keen to explore then, and as I do, because what do I need to know about you growing up that's shaped who sits in front of me today? Because has that growing up, something about that had a part to play in that role? A couple of questions in there, I guess, but yeah, generally, tell me about growing up. What was that like for you?
Yeah. I grew up in a very traditional, middle class, northwest London, Jewish environment. And to continue the theme of what we've been discussing, there's always something that just hasn't sat right about it, in the spirit of this desire. I've always felt I didn't really want to conform. And maybe at the time I just didn't know what it was, but it was like, maybe it was this sense of it being predetermined as to, gosh, what success looks like, right? So as the environment I've just described growing up, it was the jokingly cliched path of, okay, you're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, you're going to get married, you're going to have the nice house in Hampstead Garden suburb, you're going to have the 2 or 3 kids, they'll be, shining stars and go to Oxford. And there was this always deep-seated unease of going, really? Is that it? Or that's the only way? So I think there's always been this, from a young age, feeling of curiosity. And I recognise now, looking back, of like curiosity, but to the point of I'd always challenge. I'd be the awkward kid to go, if someone said it has to be blue, I'd be like, well, why can't it be red? Probably the really irritating kid that would be like, can you not just accept this as the guideline or the rule? So I've recently had that sort of reflection as to what is it about me that has just not wanted to accept the rules. And it's just an interesting reflection to put that through the lens of what do we mean by success. And I think there's always been this desire for not succumbing to all those traditional things we talked about. The money, the house, the car you drive, how you look, the status. And it's still something I'm reconciling now.
And that need to, because I love like curiosity. Definitely, it's one of the things I tell the kids all the time. Right, that never a stupid question. Just never ever start with that. Oh, this is a bit of a stupid. No, it's never a stupid. Always can ask a question. I love that they have that about them. They will ask, and I think this curiosity is such a beautiful thing to have as a child. And I guess the beauty of as we get older, and maybe that we're less so, but the beauty of hosting a podcast, while we both do, maybe because we've inherently got that curiosity about people, about life in general, right? And that there is something more to, because what you described is the narrative for most, right? Like there's going to be, these are the roles, should be here, and we look at that in a way of going, this is what it's mapped out for me. I just don't buy into that. I just don't like. No, right? Surely there's got to be something else. Just because you want to find out, right? Just because that's inside us, I guess.
Well, isn't it that phrase is like childlike curiosity? Yeah? And that's something I'm wanting to harness and bring back more into my presence, into the way that I go about my life, because it is beautiful, right? I mean, you've got kids. I don't, and that's another story. Happy to talk about that. But what we have as when we're brought into this world, it seems to be suppressed, right? All about curiosity, being silly, being playful, having no care in the world of what other people think, and in a hardwired nature of course you'll share or you'll help someone else. And this comes back to a lot of my work about the curiosity of what has happened, right? As us as human beings, particularly and we'll probably get onto it, my whole work around trying to make it easier and support people to bravely and skillfully ask for help. And you're going, well, you don't have to do that with a 4-year-old, right? You're not going to go to a nursery and go, right, I'm going to do one of my workshops with 4-year-olds to like better, more comfortably and bravely ask for help. So it's this curiosity, that's what drives me, is to understand, and I admit this myself first, to then be able to share that hopefully in a empathetic, relevant way to others that maybe lands, and they go, oh God, yeah, I feel the same way, or I find this narrative in my head too, and I'm also experiencing it this way. And I've realised, that I can look back and go, it has been a defining theme of how I've lived my life, of curiosity. This deep understanding, and I realise it's more for myself first than everyone else, because I used to say it's for everyone else. It's like, why do we think the way we think? Why do we feel the way we feel? Why do we act the way we act? Why do we do the way we do things?
Did you like that from a young age? You asked yourself them questions, or asked other people them questions at a young age, or because they're big questions, right?
Yeah, I don't think I would love to credit myself as some sort of like little Einstein of like, no, I don't think so. But I think implicitly within that, it was me challenging, like, is there another way? Is there another map? Does it have to be that rule? Maybe unpacking it is the driver behind that was like a curiosity to perhaps myself of going, well, if I didn't follow that path of trying to become a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, well, what might it look like, right? So the why, you know, this, God, I think, again, my childhood memories are very hazy, but I think I was the most irritating kid for my parents of going, why? Just like, why?
Wow.
Just always like, why?
Yeah.
They'll be like, do your homework, why? You know, go to bed, why? You know, like, so, yeah. And it's obviously central to what I'm trying to do now, and harnessing that in a way of, rather than, I think, this suppression, just accept it.
But that is interesting. One of the reasons I ask is, I think, what does it look like if we lent into that with children? Do you think those type of questions are too big for kids to ask themselves? Like, if we like the why, and for us internally, like the questions that both of us are on a similar journey with that, right? The work that we're doing on ourselves and looking in. Like, I've referenced it a couple of times recently around midlife crisis, midlife awakening. Why is it that we get to that stage, mid-40s, whatever it is, that we start to ask them questions? We start to unpack things in ourselves. For me, again, so much of it is the whole thing of understanding and processing emotion. You're talking about suppressing stuff. Like, we suppress a lot of stuff as kids, we're like that, and then all of a sudden society will get hold of us, and then we'll start to suppress certain things, and maybe that is around emotion. What does it look like? Do you think children have got the ability to unpack and ask themselves some of them questions, or do you think that's too early?
I would look at it in terms of the sort of time span of what we're talking about as being a kid or through to teenager, right? And then an adult. I think there's something beautiful in the fact that as a kid, I don't know, let's call it out to the age of prepubescent, right? You don't feel the need to. Why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why am I jealous? I think there's something beautiful about the childlike acceptance of, you don't question the emotion, you just roll with it.
You feel it.
And feel it in its raw sense. And I don't know, I'm not a child psychologist, even though I did do psychology as my degree, which probably explains also this continual curiosity. But I'm jealous nearly of the a child's a bit experience. It's just completely raw and pure. They don't question, you go, why am I getting angry about this? It's actually a revelation as to something that's true and raw and honest about themselves. So I don't know whether a kid could do that, but in a way I would actually just accept and allow them. I mean, maybe you could talk to your own experience with your own kids of going, they live it, right? They just allow that emotional feeling to just be, and then they, within a shorter space of time than any adult would have gone past it, and then they're into the more whatever non-emotionally consumed time. I think there's something hugely. It'll be a fascinating discussion, let's say, with a child psychologist, or as to what happens in teenage years, because I think that's where your identity forming, right, and that's when you're questioning yourself. You've got so many doubts. You're very impressionable, and from my limited understanding of these types of things, is you've got hormones and your brain is still forming, and you don't necessarily have the neurological ability or machinery to compute all that.
It's really because I look at it and I'm just the reason I'm unpacking it, I'm going down Islam only because in my head I'm looking and going, we've got this mental health crisis over here, and so much of it is around, I think, a lot of men especially not being able to understand and process emotion. You're saying when kids are younger, they do just seem to allow that up to a certain stage. They allow that emotion to just be and feel. Maybe don't necessarily understand it, but maybe it doesn't matter then. But when they get into when is it society gets hold of them? You go, actually, I can't. There's stigmas out there that I can't. I don't want to act like this because this is what I'm told. I'm just looking and going, what does that next generation look like if we're able to have the type of conversations and type of understanding of emotion and around that, and we give them skills and talk it at that young age. Does that affect the crisis over here?
Wow. I mean, I'm feeling something inside me going, that would be amazing, right? I mean, wow. And there's something that lights me up with the excitement of going, yes, wouldn't that be amazing? And it feels like a harnessing of and a recognition of what do we do as a culture and a society, and looking at all the influences, as you say, that suppresses it, for want of a better word, or doesn't provide the safety or the ways in which you could do that questioning as a younger kid. So there'll be a wonderful opportunity for us to recognise that. And then there's a part of me that taps into my own curiosity from a psychology background of also, can we layer on top or bring in the scientists and the experts to go and understand, well, this is what's happening with their brains at this time, right? This is what's happening with their hormones. So here's the toolkit, but it also allows for an understanding as to what machinery they're working with, right? But it'd be huge. And this is why I get quite excited, hopefully not naively, but within education and schools of bringing in, can we bring in life shit? Not like maths and the history of the Crusades or whatever. Okay, can we bring in life skills? And that would be one, right?
100%.
How powerful would that be? I don't know what it looks like, but is it the emotional awareness toolkit?
Mate, exactly that. What does it look like? Creating sharing circles in schools, don't know. Sit round, here's a conversation card, this is what you're going to talk about, and a topic which is around emotion and stuff like that, and actually getting people to open. Like, what does that? Because you're exactly. I said to Dominic Mott, who's he's a head teacher at Hurst College, like a private school near here, and I said to him, like, why is it that we're still in schools, academic intelligence measured here, and emotional intelligence is not? And because he said, because that's tangible and we can measure that. And I'm like, but there's got to be. Don't tell me we can't create different exercises or different stuff that can be measured. Surely, like that level of communication. Because exactly that, right? Life skills, life shit. Go in there and teach kids about life, real life. Because ChatGPT and other stuff's going to do a lot of this stuff from over here anyway, academically, right?
But as you're saying that, then that got me quite excited. If we can, as humankind and humanity, see this as opportunities as to this age that we're going through with AI, right?
Yeah.
Of, like you've just briefly touched upon, all that stuff that we're traditionally educating kids on, it's going to be covered by, AI, right? So what isn't? It's the life skill stuff. So would this present, the leaders that that look after education to go, how can we best equip the next generation? If all the knowledge-based stuff is covered, there's this wonderful opportunity of going, right, and I haven't got the checklist, but I think we can feel it, of going, right, well, how can we, whether it's emotional intelligence or is it how to form friendships, how is it to be honest and vulnerable, how is it to create trust? There's a thought that comes into my mind, and this is where I go, well, let's bring in the experts, because we come at it with an adult paradigm, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what I'd be fascinated is to get the experts, the child psychologists, going, right, well, what would resonate with them in terms of the machinery they've got to use at that time. So stop putting in, and this is what I feel we often do, and this is the trouble, is like we put our adult paradigms onto, well, let's call it out, let's say it's teenagers who are struggling. Okay, that was one. It was like, right, we give them life skills on empathy. But I'd be fascinated, and I think if I'm going with a hunch, a child psychologist will come in and say, they haven't got the machinery to do that. So I feel a story, a situation that's coming to my mind now of, and I don't want to go into too much sharing of the details, but someone close to in my life was struggling, particularly with ADHD, and the repercussions of that were huge. And the people that were most caring for her parents were like desperately trying to get her to be empathetic as to, do you realise the consequences of your outburst, when your mind just literally flips? And they were desperate to go, look, there's collateral damage of when this pretty extreme, dramatic outburst happens. And now I'm going back to that period in my life, I've like now understood, because she got the support of people saying they don't have that at that stage in their life. They haven't got the machinery. The brain is not at that point to create empathy. So the reason I'm bringing up this is just like 100%. I get super excited about the fact that, can we educate the next generation on life skills, right? And it's probably also the driver as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, because asking for help is a life skill. It's creating vulnerability, it's trust, it's self-awareness, it's empathy. But it's also, let's have some empathy for teenagers that might not be able to learn stuff in the way we would want them to learn it, as way we think they could do as an adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. But it's so strange to me, because there's so many people sit opposite me and they're on the same page and talk about the same thing, and actually then. And I haven't, and the thing is, I talk about it a lot, but I haven't got the solution, other than the fact that everyone agrees with the fact that we've got to measure something, or we've got to integrate life skills, emotional intelligence, whatever you want to frame it, whatever that looks like, that's got to be part of the curriculum. And yet they're still just doing this, and I'm like, what? Something's got to happen. There's got to be an overhaul, isn't there? And whether it goes down to funding or whatever it is, I can't imagine. Because I feel I think teachers are superheroes. I feel so sorry for them, because they're just given this archaic curriculum that they've got to follow, and you're like, it just so. But I think I'm looking at the stuff I'm doing over here, especially around men's mental health, and going, this is a crisis, and I can try and do stuff by having conversations on here and try and impact that. Launching Your Right Mate campaign, doing all them things, I can help with this, but actually to prevent it, we need to start somewhere over here, right? Prevention is better than cure, and that needs to start there. And how that starts has got to come down to not just parenting, but education. It's got to come down to that, isn't it? Because that's where the kids spend the majority of their time, right?
Yeah. What was bubbling up for me now is this. just call it straight out, it's like some form of mentorship,
Yeah, love
right?
it. Yeah,
And I also think there's a better label for that for when we're talking about kids or teenagers. But that spirit of how do we create let's call it a culture of mentorship. And by the way, I'm also a believer in there can be an agnostic hierarchy, I'm not sure if that's the right word, of mentorship. As in, it doesn't have to be, I'm the one who's got 30 years more experience than you, and then you listen to what I've got to say. There's peer-to-peer mentorship, right? This is getting me quite excited to go and wonder how that could be brought into real life action within a school environment, right? Of like, help each other out, right? And it could be as basic as some of your like amazing stuff of like, you're right, mate. Of just coming out with the codifying questions or language that encourage that opening up between, let's not use silly terms like peer to peer in school, but like classmate to classmate, right? And how that can be a culture within a school, right? So the teachers are not just teachers, because that creates a one-way dynamic, right? I teach, you learn. But more of a sort of reciprocal two-way street where teachers are, whatever, I don't know, confidants or...
They're guiding in some way. They're just guiding
guides,
as opposed to,
or listeners, or... I don't know if we're putting too much pressure on the teacher to do that, but as you say, it was like, well, let's remove the crazy amount of pressure and demand and workload on them to get through a ridiculous curriculum. You can imagine if they go, well, you don't need to be the algebra genius. You're needing to be the model, the vulnerability to show up and go, this is where I'm having a good day. Well, this is where I'm not having a good day. Or how imagine this, this is probably so naive, but let's go blue sky, right?
I'm in.
So let's have, imagine a teacher was able to model how to show what they're feeling at a time. You know? It doesn't sound realistic at all. And as I say, someone will just be like, you're so naive, Ash. But imagine a teacher coming in, by the way, I'm having a tough day, right? You know, this is what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm sharing it with you with like no filter, but in a way that hopefully resonates with you as, you know, this set of kids. Basically what we're trying to say is like, can society model a way of being vulnerable and showing what's going on the inside rather than just exposing what we do on the outside?
I love that. But is it unfortunately there's still the narrative is that vulnerability is seen as weakness, and that's the worst thing, isn't it? I think that's so much of why there's so much synergy between what we talk about. I think is because we're trying to change archaic narratives, right? And I think that's where potentially the problem there aligns, because actually it's not just, we can have an element of that in schools, but actually it's got to be a cultural societal shift, because if then they're going home to parents who are going, no, you can't act like that, or don't do this, don't, you know what I mean? There's it's got to be all in it, right? But that doesn't just come by changing the education system. It potentially comes by changing a societal culture, right?
The whole system.
Yeah. Which is...
It's just your view on it, but like, I'm sensing that there is starting to be a shift, because I think there's, if you look at compared to 30 years ago, there feels like there are examples of where vulnerability is celebrated. You know, particularly in the space that we've been talking about, and mental health.
Yeah.
Let's call it out. There are, I don't know if celebrated is the right word, but at least publicly exposed, revealed stories of people who have suffered, whether it's from mental health, depression, abuse, and to a certain extent that is a demonstration of vulnerability, isn't it? It's like, feels like, I don't know if this is a correct definition, but it's like vulnerability shows what's going on the inside, rather than just mask it with the outside. So maybe it's a way of trying to dial up the celebration, the value, the respect, of vulnerability being the strength. You know, to be vulnerable is to be brave. And I don't know how that can be done, but I feel confident enough we have as humankind, creative geniuses that can do it. You know, I can picture it as like, I don't know if it's like the next blockbuster movie celebrates vulnerability, or it's like a Netflix series,
vulnerability superhero or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
We joke, right? Because it's like that's the beauty, isn't it? It's the power of what we have as storytelling, right? It's the power in which blockbuster movies have a narrative and a structure and a magic source behind them. Someone told me about this recently. You know, it's like, you know, it's the hero and the villain. Yeah. It's the bigger sense of helping mankind versus the villain who's only interested about themselves. There's like a structure around it, and I'm just, I don't know. Could there be a way in which we evolve it to go, this is celebrated? Yeah, that Superman. I haven't watched it for ages, but I can imagine there are scenes of him being, well, his vulnerability was kryptonite, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So how do we make more of that reference to the kryptonite that is the value, not him being able to lift up a car and fly across around the world. So I feel you. Yeah. It's like, I suppose the challenge to humanity is, how do you show vulnerability as a strength and a courage and something to be celebrated.
And I guess in essence is so much elements of your work that enable that, right, and challenge that narrative. So like asking for help for one thing would be seen as potentially a sign of weakness, right? And we don't tend to do that. So I guess before we move on to there's a couple of things I just wanted to touch on, like the psychology degree. Why a psychology degree, and what was the plan? What did you want to do? What was the dream, the goal as a younger Ashley?
Yeah. Okay. Full honesty, I was going to do French as my degree. Why? Actually, I was going to just be a bit belittling on that. It was more, I've got had a French grandmother. And I think there was this curiosity culturally. I love to travel, love to see the world, feel the world. So France was this perhaps curiosity into another world, another language, another culture. But I didn't get the grades. I had to do Plan B. And gosh, I mean, there's a few reflections on motivations. It was a bit like, I don't know, I don't want to belittle or dismiss, but it's like the way people do like business studies degree was like, well, I don't really know what I want to do, so I'll do business studies. Or so that there was that perhaps consideration. But now I can look back and go, actually, more honestly, yeah, it was in the spirit of curiosity. It was like there's a subject that allows you to be curious. And another consideration at the time is that I wanted to pursue a career in advertising. And I'd done some work experience, I was really proud in a way. I just sort of put myself out there, found work experience jobs. In fact, before my degree, I took a year off and was doing a job essentially as a graduate. It was an amazing experience. But how that plays into psychology was the fascination around the, whatever you want to call it, the art and skill of advertising is essentially understanding who you're talking to and how to, okay, let's call it out, influence them, right?
Yeah, sure.
And to do that, you need to understand where they're coming from, what their motivations are, you know, talking about hearts and minds. And it fascinated me before I even did the degree, if I look back upon this, of going, yeah, brands, what is it? Why would one person prefer a BMW or a Mercedes, you know, or Nike traders versus Adidas? That was the curiosity. Crying out loud, they're the same things, you know. So that was, I think the backdrop to the motivation to choose psychology. And here's the funny thing: I did my dissertation thesis in my last year. It was on gender stereotyping in children's advertising.
Wow.
And gosh, I look back on that now and going, wow, how topical that could be for now, right?
Yeah.
So
What came out of that?
Just how influential it was, of just this, how it plays and built up the roles of how we, at a young age, are being told this is what a male or a female needs to act, and how influential it was, and how were we aware of how we're playing out, going back to stuff of like narratives to kids at a young age, and do we realise this, and what's the consequences? I can't remember the exact conclusions. I have to go back to it.
Mate, that's fascinating, though, and you're right. There is so much. Again, there's so much. Like the more, again, back to the more work you do in this space. I am trying again, just for the podcast as a generally, like just trying to understand people and understand and people's mindsets, and our society influences so much of what our outcomes and our beliefs about ourselves and about the world and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't. Just the fact that I just think we've been sold. I think society has sold us, from a capitalist society, whatever it is. We've been sold what life should look like, and actually, the majority of people, we do follow that path to some degree.
And then how we show up.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. There's a part of me just wants to rip that book up and throw it out and go, let's change it now. Let's change it now. Like for that next generation, going, this is not what it has to look like. It could look like this. It could look like this. It could look like that. And when you come to gender, exactly, you go, that can look like whatever it wants to be as well. Do you know what I mean? And knowing the space that I'm in with that, and going like, what, why is it that we're programmed to immediately go, there's boys here, there's girls there, and there's like, this is what you should look like, this is what you should look like, and this is what you should think, this is the role model. Again, back to role modelling, and back to, like you mentioned about the mentorship and stuff like that, actually what it means to be, again, stuff and stuff I'm working, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a young boy and a young man in today's society? And how do we change the narrative now to, again, have the impact over here on this? I keep going full circle and referring it back to how do we address the mental health crisis and suicide rates? It's changing narratives, isn't it? And doing what that looks like.
Gosh, I mean, yeah. It's... Sometimes I feel like then I feel quite overwhelmed, right? Even when you've just shared that, you're going, whoa, this feels big and nearly too big, and then disempowering. But perhaps that's also where we can reflect on both of our respective paths and work as to, well, how can we make small impacts and help individuals at one time, or look at a small entry point to start to change that narrative. Like with your You're Right Mate campaign, mine's like, okay, can we just start small with like going out and being firstly self-aware and then brave enough to ask for help and experiencing that, and that might challenge your own narrative of going, oh, when I asked for help to get a lift to the station, was that me really being weak? Or if we go into gender, I think there's something very deeply hardwired with males are told, and maybe it's, I don't know, within our machinery, that we need to be independent. I mean, I've reflected a lot on this as to give myself a bit of compassion of why am I so doubling down on independence. I mean, there's stuff that's happened in my early childhood, which I'm more than happy to share, that as I realised giving me, or I've harnessed that as a coping mechanism, being self-reliant. But there's also a bit of compassion I give myself as going, well, perhaps there's some sort of, there is a biological wiring as to why we're like that. So I'll give you my take on it. As if we look at it in sort of Neanderthal days, it was, if we're here on this earth to procreate, then you need to look literally the most attractive mating partner. So to females, if you're presenting this image of being independent, you got your shit together, you're self-reliant, as in the alpha male, then that's pretty attractive to the female that's going to go, I want to have kids that are going to be able to survive generationally to pass on the DNA, who are independent, self-reliant, and not going to succumb to whatever, an early death. So I've often talked about this, of going, just a little bit of compassion, of going, there's something about this hardwiring of independence that it's in our brains, it's in our machinery.
Is that coming from a survival point of view? Like, just like you go back to, like you said, the whole times, it's just that independence and that self-reliance is because we've got to survive, right?
Well, I see it as going, this is in very, very rudimentary terms.
Yeah.
So if you go, you've got the female Neanderthal woman going, all right, there's someone who looks like they're going to be able to survive, right, and cope with famine, storms, flooding, because he's strong and he's self-reliant and he can build, or and that's what they go, well, what do I want my kids' DNA to be genetically moving forward? So that's a very anthropological perspective. But to your point, we don't need to operate like that anymore, right? And so much, I feel, of our behaviour nowadays is a expression of, we've got machinery that's still appropriate and made for 10,000 years ago, and we've just got, we haven't caught up yet. And we can go down the path of like whatever, social media or mobile phone addiction. It's basically, we've been hacked of a machinery that's adapted and perfectly suited 10,000 years ago. Diet, we crave sugar and salty stuff. There's all reasons for that, but we haven't got the equipment now to go, as you say, rip up that playbook and go, food is abundant, or whatever. So there is an opportunity, and I suppose that drives our work of going, how can we start again? Start afresh.
Well, talk to me about the gift of help, asking for help. What? Talk to me about your journey. Why is that so central to your work and your life now? Talk to me about that.
So it's come from two major events in my life, and I've only recently got more and more comfortable with sharing the first one I'm about to tell you. The second one most people know about. So the first one I want to share with you is from a time when I was a young kid, baby. So I grew up with my father left me when I was 2. So we had a very tight unit between my older brother, who's 3 years older, and my mother. And I highlight that because I realise how tight and perhaps supportive and reliant I was on that without realising it during those very, very younger formative days. And one morning when I was 5, I woke up and I remember looking on the clock on my wall, and it was 7:45, and I was thinking to myself, normally mummy would have come in and got us starting ready to go to school. And I walked out my room and then saw my brother in the corridor. We both were looking at each other going, well, where's mummy? And we walked into her room, and she passed away in her sleep. And I've lived with this for a long, long time in a very sort of, I've tried to rationalise it. And it's only recently that I've realised that that event has led me to have this coping mechanism where I don't rely on anyone. So I had a mother one day and the next day I didn't. And my coping mechanism has been to be just double down on being hyper independent and self-reliant. And it's helped me to explain how I've then gone about the rest of my life. Of a lot of, it's served me in many ways. I remember having a paper round as a kid and earning like a tenner a week, and I'll be the first. I don't know anyone else was getting up at 6:30 in the morning before school, through to always being like the first to go away by myself, the first to leave home, the first to get a job, first to buy a house. And I recognised that as my driver of going, right, I don't need anyone, I'm going to be independent. And then this all changed, or it was like, as life does, throws you a curveball and it gives you like an awakening. And that takes me to like the second, I suppose, major event that shaped me who I am today. And that was, now what are we talking about? 2022, 8th of April. You'll realise why I remember the date so much when I tell you. That was the day I woke up, and at that time I was a very healthy, sporty athlete. I was a passionate cyclist. I was captain of a cycling club doing 12,000 kilometres a year, big crazy challenges for charity. And I woke up that one morning, Friday morning, and I had these strange bruises all over my body, and blood blisters on the inside of my cheek and on my tongue. And this was 2022. And I hadn't been feeling right leading up to that day, but this was like tail end of COVID, so anything that you didn't feel was right with you was like, it's probably COVID. But clearly, like these symptoms were like, this isn't COVID. So I'd phoned up my doctor, and I was basically told to get to hospital as soon as possible. And I reflect back now, and it's like, this was still old Ashley, doesn't ask for help. So I didn't like ask a neighbour. I didn't even order an Uber. I just jumped in the car and drove there myself. And it's scary even to think like back now as to what was really going on inside my body that I drove to the hospital. Long story short, I got to hospital, was given some emergency tests, and it basically revealed I had life-threateningly low red blood cells and 0 platelets, so the parts of your blood that help with clot. So now I reflect back and go, my body was, in a positive way, giving me a massive red flag to go, something's not right, but in a scary way, it was touch and go. So from there, I was admitted to hospital, given emergency life-saving transfusions, blood infusions and blood transfusions. And over the next 10 days, they were trying to work out this diagnosis of what was going on. And I was given a diagnosis of a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and a very rare autoimmune disease, and then put on this pretty debilitating, intense 5-month program of chemotherapy and immunotherapy. And I can look back now of how this was my ask for help boot camp, because I was at my most helpless, and it was like I was forced to, at first, just simply accept help from the amazing medical care team I had. I have this newfound appreciation of just anyone who works in the health service. They are just angels. And how wonderful it was to receive help, because it just wasn't very natural for me for the previous 49 years of my life. And wow, isn't this just a beautiful feeling to feel cared for, supported, looked after? And then there was this penny dropping moment, I remember it so well, of where experiencing and seeing what joy it gave people who were offering help to have their help received. And, friends coming in with like home cooked meals or balloons, or I'd have a conversation on the phone and hearing them sort of being lit up by just being there for me, and me talking through my terrible night's sleep or worries. And it led me to feel like, Ash, how come you spent like your whole life not just only denying yourself the help and care and support from others, but denying others that want to help you the joy, the lift, the pride, the feel-good factor of having the chance to help someone they care about. So during a lot of those, and I had a lot of time to think in the hospital bed and during sleepless nights and chemotherapy, to go, am I the only one that is going about life going, no, I'm fine, I'll manage, I'll be okay, I don't want to be a burden, I don't want to put you out. And thinking, we're denying this gift. This is what that's why I call it the gift of help, because it's a gift to yourself and to the person offering help. And by not asking, you're denying both yourself and that other person. And that's what's led me down this path of, if I can share my story, my experience, my vulnerability, maybe this will land with other people, particularly, let's be honest, middle-aged, stubborn men, to reflect on themselves and perhaps just reconsider. And that's where it started. It was like, right, can I share this in a way that is going to inspire and motivate people to rethink, reframe their relationship with help?
Wow, mate. Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess so much for me there, but even just the title going, the gift of help, right? That is such a beautiful message, because I think when we spoke before, I've referenced it many times about the feeling of feeling truly successful is when you help others to be successful, right? Or you help others. So there's something in like the feeling, and I listened to a TED talk where Daniel Wilshue's been on here, and he talks about in service of others, and when you're helping other people, the joy that you get by helping someone else, right? And the feeling of fulfillment and peace that you get from helping someone else. So if that's such a great feeling for me. So from a personal point of view, I'm gonna get so much from this, right? But I'm doing something for someone else. Like what a beautiful message to be able to share, right? And but again, the narratives will say that not to ask for help, like you said, that stubborn. And I guess for you, like again, back to I guess that growing up period, having to almost survive for yourself from a young age, right? And recognise, what was your relationship like with your brother and stuff? Are you close with your brother, and did like you, because he's older than you, right?
Yeah.
Like to have that support from him, or
Yeah, he's the closest person in my life, apart from my partner. We have an incredibly tight relationship, and there's, I suppose, we've been each other's crutch. Yeah. I mean, I get quite emotional even just thinking about just how much he means to me. Well, yeah, just in the spirit of, I suppose, we've been through a shared trauma experience, grief, loss. So this spirit of always wanting to be, and I know this drives me, wanting to be seen, wanting to be understood, like there's no one else I can share that with, in a spirit of just wanting to have that empathy, to know what it's like. So yeah, I think we've been each other's rocks. Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it's one. I guess. Have you talked about or do you talk about that period? I guess of childhood and that with him. Like, do you share that together? Is that something you've
Well, it's like
explored?
this. It's a really topical question, Sam, because it's something I'm sitting a lot with at the moment. Of this desire to understand myself, and it plays to all my work with asking for help. I want to understand myself to then share it with as many people that it can be inspirational or relatable, motivating, and do we talk? We talk about it, and that's beautifully sort of connecting and feeling a sense of solidarity. Um, but it's a journey. There's so much self-discovery. The opportunity for self-discovery is there by being able to talk about it more. But there's a lot of bravery that it takes. There's also a feeling of, yeah, this is so topical. There's a timing to the share. So I think what we've done together is rationalize and coped through the shared grief, the shared trauma. And it's fascinating because I'm very recently now on a phase in my life of self-discovery. Well, yeah, prompted a lot by this journey through cancer. Of this is, I know it's cliche, but there's always silver linings from life's curveballs, and this has been the massive one. I talk about it in terms of cancer is now giving me a second life, and I heard this phrase, I love it. You don't realise you've got two lives until your second life begins, and it's been this opportunity, this opening to understand myself better, and to go back to that 5-year-old kid, to understand him, to tell him it's okay, to also just validate what he went through. And so to your question, do I talk about it with my brother a lot? That's a part we've yet to been able to do, because I know he struggles in terms of just has no memories of it.
Do you have more? Do you have memories? Have you as you started to unpack it? Have there been memories for you, or because you obviously what was you 5? Did you say you was 5?
I was 5, yeah. So I do have memories of it, but now I'm in a period now of asking myself, the memories, I feel some of them are true, some of the gaps are filled in by assumption, deduction, stories I might have been told, and I'm now deeply curious to go back there to really understand the actual the real experience of it. Because gosh, this all plays into my own work with asking for help as to what the barriers are, because there are emotional ones, they're narratives, they're stories we tell ourselves, and I feel like I've done the brave work to understand that I do have a challenging narrative around being a burden, And this is perhaps what I've been telling myself is like, since 5 years old, I'm a burden. I'm this little kid that no one knows what to do with. And so then I've just then gone about my life doing my best to not be a burden to anyone. And that's influenced a lot of the way I've lived and the way I show up. But it's got to a point now, particularly with cancer, of going to unpack this more, to really like go there. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bravery I feel about emotions. Right, the ones that are uncomfortable is where you got to go.
It's where the growth happens, right?
Yeah, but it starts with the bravery. The gold is the growth. But it's not so easy to tell someone, oh, you know, when you're angry, go there. You know, when you're sad, go there. Gosh, speaking to the topic I know is so passionate to you, mental health. It's like, if you're sad, if you're depressed, if you're lonely, if you're self-loathing, you tell someone, you know, that uncomfortable emotion you're feeling now, or go with it, go sit with it, go. I mean, this work I've been doing, the game changer is then if you could embrace it and see it as, it's hard to say it, but it's like a gift, because it's like your inner self, your inner true you is trying to tell you the path for you to go down. But yet we all, and it's completely understandable, is going, well, I don't want to stick with this.
See, because of how uncomfortable. Yeah. Is it? Again, back to what we was talking about earlier. Is it because even now we're sitting opposite each other at a similar age that we go, we were never given the skills or the toolkit to be able to do what you're doing now, that seeking that on that journey, asking those questions, unpacking it all. We wasn't given those skills or the toolkit at a young age to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And again, back to your reference of our mental health and the people that we don't know how to sit with that emotion, don't know what that, I'm feeling like this, I don't want to feel like this, so I'm going to suppress it, and then it's going to come out in other ways, and then that's where it gets to. So my whole thing again, back to the, how do we fix it? How do we fix this thing that we're talking about? This, you're talking about your journey and sharing, so brave and open and vulnerable around two big events in your life, right? But now you're trying to understand and unpack those. You'll come to that realisation. How do we fix that? Where people are faced with these challenges, but they're able to sit and understand those emotions and able to not suppress them, but be able to understand them. How do we fix that?
There's the $1 million. If anyone had that, I'd be like, right, I'm signing up. Come on. I mean, yeah. There's the gold, right? I mean, that's the... If people are willing to, first of all, even just be open-minded enough to hear that as a conversation, right? If you went up to every man on the street and said, do you want to learn how to be comfortable with rejection, guilt, jealousy, sadness, loneliness? I don't... I mean, it's like going, well, how far back up do we need to go, right? I mean, I hear you of going, wow, if we could create the toolkit, the fix, to give people the easy tool to then be comfortable with the emotion. Look what liberating, empowered life you could live, right? I think we've got to back up a bit, because the start point for me is like to go around asking people, do you want to get comfortable with your emotions, right? And I don't know if anyone's even there yet, but playing this out, Sam, and I really love this conversation, I love the opportunity to talk it through, and then I'm nearly answering my own question of implicitly is also going, well, the fix might be to model it, and it's sort of like a movement, right? Have you seen this? There's a wonderful YouTube clip of I think he's called the shirtless dancing guy. He's at a festival, and he starts in the middle of a clearing. There's a lot of people there, but there's a bit of a clearing at the festival, and there's obviously music going on. And this guy decides to just stand in the middle of the clearing. He's got his shirt off, and he starts dancing in just a very free, wild, wacky way, right? And then the video continues with then one person just decides, oh, I'm going to dance with this guy, and I'm going to equally dance in a completely free, don't really care what anyone thinks way. And then you see over the next couple of minutes, a few more people join, and then you got this, what is this, what they call like the secret of a movement, is like everyone just comes in. So to create the analogy from that, I'm not saying this is the fix, but as an idea, is going, well, we need to show up and model it, right? Show up and model taking this through, is going, and I'll take responsibility. I'll try to be the leader of going, right, I'll go out there in the world and show I want to be comfortable with uncomfortable emotions. And I want to accept them, and I want to embrace them. And do so in a way of no expectation, but hopefully one person will want to come and join me. And therein lies, maybe we can start a mini movement. But one person's got to be the brave modeler.
I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant, it's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events, enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing.
And in a roundabout way, you're doing that already, right? In with your work, with the, like, again, on both of our parts, right? Yours asking for help, that bravery, mine trying to reframe success and look at it differently. Both really, again, why there's so much synergy and alignment with, and why we've connected so deeply as we have in such a short space of time, is that both of them are trying to understand and unpack and deal with our own emotions. Right? We're on, like, I think what I found fascinating, we've both shared this a little bit anyway, but like, one of the reasons I do this is because it's like therapy for me, right? Similar with you, and I think we're on. Like, I'm not sitting here as a podcast host going, I've got all the answers, I've learned all this stuff, so I'm gonna interview you. I'm just having a conversation about life shit that I don't understand myself, and I'm trying to go on a journey with it myself. And similar, I'd be really interested with where you are right now. You're sad, you're in the middle of this journey of it, right, for you, where, and putting yourself in that uncomfortable position and asking yourself those uncomfortable questions and uncomfortable, I keep referring to that word, uncomfortable situation. How do you feel about it? What talk to me about your feelings about it right now. Like, what if I was to ask you to describe that? Is it freeing? Is it really uncomfortable and really hard, or are you feeling liberated with it? Where's your head at with it? Where you are right now?
If I may, I'm going to help reframe the question to myself, actually, and it's reflecting actually your question. It's not my head at it. It's not. I'm telling this to myself. I'm not trying to sound I know it all. the question I want to be asked is like going, where am I feeling it? Right? Where am I embodying it? And it's even, I'm proud of myself to actually have that radar up. Because if you asked me this question, I don't know, a year ago, I'd have gone with like, okay, where's my head at? And it's like, it's not about my head, you know? But that's, it shows me I'm still beginner level 1. It's like, you gotta at least recognize, right, what's the question actually I really need to ask myself is like, okay, what am I feeling? What's my body telling me? And so where am I at that journey is to be more aware of, that's the question I want to ask myself. And what I'm trying to bring more imprinted into my everyday sort of awareness and experience is exactly that of like, where have I gone through a process of something doesn't feel right. What is it? Okay, call it out. I have historically and recently been using this word. Why am I triggered? To then start to exercise that muscle of curiosity versus being consumed. I came out with that last night. I loved it. Be curious, not consumed by a uncomfortable emotion. To then allow to be in it and not consumed by it. Right. So if I was great example, right? We just had it. You asked me about my brother, and there was a feeling I had in myself that was going, I don't know. At that moment you asked that question, I was like overwhelmed with sadness of like, what happens if I lose him? And even now saying it, it was like, at the time I was like, right, normally old Ashley would have suppressed that emotion, don't want to show sadness. Number one. Number two was like, no, let it be. And then, I don't know, now or after our conversation, I might be curious going, well, where was that sadness coming from? So to try and more answer your question of like where I'm at with it is also, wow, I suppose it's like going to the be comfortable with uncomfortable emotions gym. Like, go there and you'll start to exercise that muscle. And the experience I'm having is of then you can reflect back going, okay, how bad was that? And how do you feel now? And okay, I would invite you as well, anyone who's listening, how do you feel after a good cry? How do you feel after you've talked out with someone what you're worried about? It goes back to what we're saying. How do you feel when you've been vulnerable, but actually allowed it, be in it, whatever that vulnerability feels to you? And I suppose the power of this is to make sure that you sort of capture, honor it, to imprint it, that might start to change the narrative, because we've all, and I have, and you know, I know I've suppressed emotions most of my life, and I know why. Of putting a positive reinforcement association to it, you know. And it's like, I never thought about it that way, but like, yeah, imagine, like we told ourselves, well, just remind yourself when you've had a good cry or you've let something out. I mean, that's the language you use, right? Just let it out. Whatever it is, anger, I'm really fucked off, or irritation, but remind yourself, what's the experience you have when you, rather than suppress it, let it out. And then tell yourself, well, how did it feel? And maybe there's the opportunity of going, rather than just carry on with life and it's sort of nearly forgotten or it was not imprinted at that moment, take the time out to go, I'm going to imprint this now, of going, wow, right? Gosh, I mean, it's even, I think we're anticipating it now, like Sam, and we're in the middle of this amazing conversation, and afterwards it would be like, God, so much came out. And how did you feel? Well, I just allowed emotions to be, and I was vulnerable and open about them. So do you feel lighter or heavier?
need to create more spaces. Okay, I think there's a couple of things for me. Is it that we need to create more spaces to do that? We need to give, again, people skills to not only that narrative around the importance of being vulnerable and how that can help you, but actually the other people the skills to create those spaces. I remember sitting on that first conversation and crying on Zoom with you, right, when you asked me those questions, because you held a space and allowed me the permission. You gave me the permission to be able to be vulnerable with you, right, which is a skill that you've got and a gift that you've got to be able to hold that space for someone, whether you've been trained in that or you've just naturally got that, or from your own lived experience you've got developed those tools and that skill set to be able to provide that for someone. Is it that we need to create more spaces and give people more tools to be able to hold that space?
The word that really landed when it was on my mind as you were talking was permission. That's what I've felt recently. And I think that speaks to my own psyche, is that I'm looking for permission. When the permission's there, you can be vulnerable, or like we've talked about before, you can go deep. And this is I love it. It's like maybe we're planting a seed here, Sam, of it's like the brief. What's the brief for the toolkit, right?
Yeah.
The brief for the toolkit is how to create, and I don't know the language, but for now it's like the safe space is what is commonly called. For me, what lands is if someone said, here's your permission ticket to open up. Brilliant. You know?
Okay.
I'm in. And I don't know, I'm playing this out of going, well, we do it, but it's nearly like, well, if you go to a therapist, it's implicit, right? We're in that world of men's circles. Well, there's the permission ticket already. And I think this speaks so beautifully and poignantly to your work with like mental health, mine implicitly with asking for help, of going, there's an implicit permission being given, right? Or an invitation, maybe. We could talk about language, and words really are important. And I think when you get the words right, the magic can happen, or the floodgates can open. That's how I think the insight you've gained, whether it was by design or coincidence, is brilliant. Of going, the phrase "you're right, mate" is giving the invitation, right? The permission. And therein lies, I suppose, we're starting to, whether we know it or not, we're starting to create the brief for what we're trying to create. And then the beauty of this conversation is going, well, what are we trying to create first of all? And then what's the brief around it? And if I unpack it a little bit, it'll be like, right, there we go. How are we creating simple, accessible, in the moment, by the way, I think is so important, tools to create that invitation, that permission.
I love that. And I think, and again, I think it's, again, so much the work is around men's mental health, right? For me, purely I've lent into that more based on the feeling and generalising a lot here that maybe women, young girls, they create more of those spaces naturally than we do. Again, is it back to narratives? Is it back to stuff like, I guess, there's a lot of myths and there's a lot of, I guess, stories around. Let's talk about help, like asking for help alone, right? What is just with the people you spoke to, what's the main barriers for people to ask for help? What is that main barrier? What is inherent in us as men, as we're getting older? We go, I can't. You've really openly shared, obviously, looking at some of the things for you, but based on your childhood and what happened to you. That's why I've got to be independent. I can't ask for help. I've got to be self-reliant. That's played into your role and your story and your narrative. But what is it for others and men that we don't? What are the biggest barriers for us to ask for help, do you think?
Yeah, and it does play to a lot of my work, and I think it's just, as we talked about at the beginning, this is my driver of curiosity. So it's like, if we can label it, if we can identify it, you can then start to be on the path of empowerment, right? So it's like, what is the problem? So some of the barriers, very common one is like a fear of rejection, and the narrative that plays out. And I don't know if this is so much more for males or females. I can come on to some of the differences I've found with my work as to differences between males and females. But this fear of rejection is a very, very common one. Simply, we've created the narrative that someone's going to say no. And that's an uncomfortable feeling. So we avoid it. So it's like just a loop. And the psychology of why have we told ourselves they're going to say no? Then it plays to all the influences we've had as how we grew up in society. And I know I've got this psyche barrier. Other ones are the fear of looking incapable, or you should know that. So that plays to like an identity status. Okay, I'll use my own example of I've my background professionally has been in advertising, marketing, and branding. So I won't go out and ask for help about anything related to marketing, branding, and advertising, because I'm like, you should know your shit, right? So it challenges, and you put this narrative as to you've weakened your own identity of being a person who's an expert or a strategist in that, for fear of looking stupid. Other ones is being a burden, and I think that plays, from my experience, more to females, and I think it plays to a lot of the challenges that mothers have, of going, right, because their identity is as a mother, you need to be looking after the kids, and then you don't want to be a burden to anyone else. And then that plays to another, as I said, more female oriented barrier, is this sense of you owe somebody. Like we keep this constant ledger. We're like, Sam, if I give you a lift, then I'm expecting a lift, next time. I'm jumping around here, but this is one of my tips of like where I go. The most powerful form of help is offering it unconditionally, but yet, whether we are aware of it or not, that plays into it, and then we can get into business and that world where, are you really asking for help, or is there an agenda? Or is it you really offering help, or is there an agenda? Other barriers. But if we were talking about male ones, because I know this is something that's very close to your heart, I'd say it's the identification of you are an independent person. So that's so important to you as an identity that you don't want anything that challenges it. So asking for help just weakens it. Another one that's particularly to males or to blokes is ego, in the sense of, well, either I know best, or I'm the only person who can do this. Classic scenario that's bubbling up for me is like, why is it the blokes historically be like, when it comes to directions, they will never ever ask anybody, and they will just keep, in the days of before Google Maps, would be like using whatever, the A to Z or the Atlas. Okay, right, I know where I'm going. You're lost. No, I'm not. You can ask someone for help. No. So I think that plays to sort of a very male ego of, I know, and you don't want to say, I don't know. I'm just playing that last thought to close this out, of like the most admirable response that a leader could give is to something and say, I don't know.
Yeah. But we feel that, I think we feel as especially as men, we feel like we should know the answers and we should. And I think that's again, back to narratives that I should know that by now. I should have my shit together and I should understand, and I shouldn't I'm at 46 years old, I'm still finding myself, if you like, or whatever that looks like. And maybe that's an ongoing thing for all of us, and we're all ongoing. I think for me, like listening to your work and listening to some of the podcasts and listening to and the conversations that even this that we've had, I think there's something so powerful in trying to understand that how rewarding it is when you ask for help, and so the gift that someone gives you of that help, knowing that you're making them feel good as much as you feel like, because there's that narrative. I will go about the houses because that's my brain, but in the sense that me asking you for help, I'm asking you for help. Actually, that makes you, by you offering that help, and you've supported me in some way with no conditions on it, that's made you feel good, and you've helped me in a way, and that's made me. So actually, everyone feels great about it. That's an amazing thing. So that's why I love the phrase, just the name of the podcast. Every time I just keep in my head. Ever since our very first conversation, it's just landed with me, and it just sits with me a lot. It's a gift. It's a gift of help. I'm here I want to help you. And when other people, I'm still trying to unpack it for me. When people offer me help, I don't know, Mark, thank you, but no. Like, I'll give you an example. A very close friend of mine. I've spoke to you previously off air, like going through some tough times at home and looking at separating what that looks like, and going, someone's offered me some money. They like that. I win the lottery, give it back to me. Don't need it back. It's not a loan. It's just there if you need it, and like that. So the problem I've got at the moment, he's given me a solution there like that, but I can't. I struggle to take that. I can't say I feel a burden. I feel that I'd owe someone something, which I would. I'd owe them money, but he's saying you don't owe me. It's there, done. And I just talking about feelings that I feel really uncomfortable with that. And he's like a brother. He's a lovely man. I know he's got my back and they're supportive of me. I spoke to someone about it, and they said to me, but he's giving you a gift. He's giving you a gift, like, and he's solving a problem for you. And if he's in that position to do it, people want to help you because they love you or for whatever reason. But my internal narrative, I still can't accept that. I'm trying to unpack that. Like, what is it around those things that stop us? It still stops us, doesn't it?
There's two ways we can go with this. I can keep trying to help you find what's really, really, really going on. I've got a hypothesis. So why don't we try both approaches? Okay. So I've got my hypothesis, which I'll freely give you, but let me ask a couple more questions, right? So you said it feels like a burden. It feels like you'll owe him. Can you go a little bit deeper on it? What? As I say, let's get out of our heads. Let's get into our body. What really is going on when this guy's going, dude? Even when he's saying, he could say to you, "This is not a burden, and you don't owe me." Yeah. Right. So he's even addressing the elephant in the room. What else might be going on? I don't know if it helps. Like, just close your eyes and feel what's your body telling you. What's a narrative that's coming up. So he's gone, Sam, you don't owe me. I guess. It's going to make me feel great. Something else is coming into play.
You know what? I'll tell you what's coming up for me. And this is a lot of what I've been trying to unpack, and I did with a little bit of therapy and cancer. I think, if I'm being honest, it's it taps into and brings up my feeling of inadequacy, stemming from childhood. From I've referenced a few times recently around the reference or the narrative, really, not even the reference, but the narrative that I told myself as a young boy that my brother was the clever one. By default, I was not the clever one. So I feel like I always felt inadequate compared to him. He's similar with your. Like, I asked about your brother, and similar to you, he is my best mate. I love him more than anyone on this planet. I love him to death. But for whatever reason, the narrative I've told myself for so many years is that I'm inadequate in some way. And even I've spoke to my wife about this, like, even in our relationship, and like, criticism of me makes me feel inadequate, and those feelings. So I wonder, and it's only just come to me now listening to you, how you framed it, is maybe it's that feeling of the help he's offering me makes me feel inadequate. I should have it together, and I'm feeling inadequate. That's the
Yeah.
if we're going a bit deeper.
It's
not like me to go deep on a podcast, mate. I don't.
You should call it the Deep
The
Podcast.
deep.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
So I want to freely, what I had in my mind as the hypothesis, because I can relate to it, was shame. From my own experience, it's funny. I only reflected upon it this morning. And when you brought up this example of accepting money, from my own experience and also talking to other people, there's the relationship with money is a very evocative, and I can freely talk about it from my own perspective of financially, or my relationship with money, I realise stems from shame. And this beautifully ties back to your podcast and your first question of, like, definition of success. Societally, we're told it's basically money, to be honest.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you're not successful. And if you're not successful, then what are you? And because we've been hardwired that self-worth is defined by success, and the metric of success is money, if you haven't done it, or you haven't done as well with it as you feel like you should have because of where you are in life and your age and stage and should be having X, then it challenges all, for me, and I think it might play to a lot of people, maybe for you, a sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
So to accept money with all the unconditions, with all the love, it's going to hit well, for me it does, the wound of shame, of going, well, good enough. I think that's another way of saying inadequate. And this plays to a lot of the things we've been talking about. I mean, if we're going really deep, then it's this, the heart now I'm realising potentially of my work is, how do we get people to feel comfortable with shame? Because if you can be okay with it, because shame, from what I understand from psychology, is the most difficult, wounding, uncomfortable emotion we experience as human beings. More than anything else. Why? Because it actually gets to the heart of our identity. And who we are on this planet is what makes us thrive or not. And I'm now increasingly realising this is such a foundational aspect of the stuff of everything I'm doing with the gift of help, because let's look at this as a positive, glass half full, of, if I talk about it for myself, and maybe I'll be curious to hear, but let's go actually straight with the question to you of, like, how would you feel you'll be able to live your life being comfortable with, call it inadequacy for your language? How How could that feel? If you visualize, if you try to sort of close your eyes and imagine Sam Thomas being able to go through life and going, it's okay. I'm feeling shameful. It's okay.
Good question. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I think like what's coming up is what you said a little bit before around just trying to let go of stuff. Right? When you said about even crying and we let stuff out or whatever it is, I'm trying to. I felt like I was further down. In honesty, like even this conversation, I felt like I was further down the line of dealing with those emotions of inadequacy or because naturally by our conversation this year and me telling you where I am now by asking for help, right? What like my life from a business point of view has definitely the trajectory has shifted massively because I've asked it for help. I've put my hand up and people have offered that to me and it's been game changing. And that has felt good as opposed to feeling shameful and inadequacy. But at the same time, there was elements of that. So in that room where I sat with 10 other people, 10 entrepreneurs, I shared quite openly and vulnerably figures and stuff around money. Again, back to the money side of it, I felt embarrassed at that time, and maybe not used that word before, but I've been using it inadequate, but maybe shame as well around like there's a perception of me here, and then I'm showing this here, and that's the reality of that is like, oh, that's a bit shit. Do you know what I mean? Not that anyone judged me for that, and I wasn't judging, but they was there to help me, and they give advice and they supported me in that sense. It was just my own internal narrative, I think, and I think this is where the shift has maybe got to come. I don't even know if I've answered your question properly, but just I don't. I guess it's trying to find the ability to let go of that.
I felt something as you were saying. Other people are not judging you, so it's the freedom from another way to frame it. Apart from saying being comfortable with shame, it's like imagine a life where you don't judge yourself. You haven't got this ego-driven voice that says you're inadequate. It's like that might be a way to think of like the way of saying letting go. It's like imagine a life where letting go equals ego voice no longer judging me every freaking day.
Because that feels freeing, right? It feels freeing.
Yeah. I mean,
but are you there? Where are you in that? I'm keen to.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm like, I'll be honest. All the questions I'm asking you, Sam, is what I'm asking myself. And it's this honesty of when you're curious about other people, you're actually curious about yourself. Right? So they were leading questions because if I was like literally asking myself those questions, I would say exactly the same thing of like, holy moly, I would feel like every rock in that backpack I've been carrying around is now out of the backpack. So it's like lighter, freer, liberated, empowered. It's like anything's possible. Because I do feel like I've been living a life where, put it in the language we just talked about, it's like, yeah, the self-judgment, the ego critic, the sense of embarrassment, shame, rejection has held me back in so many parts of my life. And yeah, we can reflect upon, even money. I've recognized, and then I feel it's easier to alchemize by being able to name it and acknowledge it. I start to feel this whole sense of our language culturally doesn't help it. Because I was just about to say it's easier when you name it and then shame it. No. It's
don't
like,
shame
that's
it.
like the wrong freaking language, right? We just like inadvertently using languages that makes it freaking worse. It's like, name it and then embrace it. That might be a bit one step too far for people, but the first step is like always we're saying, isn't it? In life, it's like, well, you got to name the problem in order to be able to
deal with it, understand it, process it.
So until we get to a point, and this is for me my own personal experience of, I can be honest and open here. Yeah, okay, my relationship with money, it's come from a spirit of shame. Gosh, even talking to, we both know you're on, right? Live your life from a space of love rather than fear. And isn't that it, right? If shame is there as this ego-driven influence, the outcome is going to be you're living a life from fear. So maybe I'm answering my question of like, what would it be to live a life where you're not judging yourself and you're okay with shame? Is that you can only live a life from love.
It was when he shared that on the podcast, Aaron, it was just, you're right, because he said to me, he sat opposite me with he said like this podcast, this comes from a place of love. He said like, you would never have done if it come from, I've got to make money out of the podcast, I'm going to do this. You wouldn't have been sitting here doing 120 episodes, like, and it was just, when you do resonate, you go, he's trying to get to that place, isn't it? With everything that you just go, I'm just gonna, everything I do will come, look at it and come from a place of love as opposed to a place of fear. And that is
like, you're doing this podcast. I'm trying to ask, how does it feel to do this podcast? Is there any sense of inner critic, judgment, inadequacy, shame, embarrassment?
only when I listen back to myself and I sound like a daddy die I want to be. I'm like, yeah, I'm geezer and I don't really sound like that. Surely I don't sound like that, but I do. But I don't. It's strange, and I still people say to me like, "Oh, you're really good," and give me compliments. I'm trying to get better at that. Go, thank you, and take it, as opposed to going, yeah, but not articulate, or I'm this, or I put myself down to do it. So I'm trying to get better at that. But I've got to a point. I think because I don't think, we mentioned earlier, I don't feel like it's an interview. Like people say, oh, you're a really good interview. I don't feel like it's not an interview. I'm having a chat. I'm good at chatting. Yeah, brilliant. I love a chat, and I'm really good at chatting. So yes, I'll take that. If that's what you class as an interview, I disagree. I think a journalist is a really good interviewer, an able interview, and they get to the feel of the story. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to create a space to share a story, someone's story, and then I'm curious about that person's story because it's probably going to help me in some way, which today is definitely doing.
That's a beautiful, if I may, difference between an interview and a conversation. It feels like an interview has an end goal in mind, and it's usually one way. Yeah. And yet here is, no, there's no agenda. There's a spirit. There's a open-mindedness to possibilities, but it's from a place of love and a place of connection, right? Isn't that what a conversation is?
Yeah, I love that. I'm really curious. I'm keen to just, with you, like your how you feel around where you are on this journey now. Is that going back to the time of sitting there and someone sitting opposite you and telling you those dreaded words that no one wants to hear around cancer? Where was your heart and head at then when you got that news? And how have you, I guess, how much has that impacted and changed your life or your outlook on life to where you are now?
It's really fascinating for me to look back on that. If I go to your first part of the question I want to answer it honestly, and it's probably not the answer that people are expecting. The experience I had, I didn't have that cliche of that dreaded "you have cancer" moment. My experience was more, it was very incremental and marginal as to the experience and the revelation of what I had. So it was like, I I had the alarming symptoms, but I don't go, oh my God, I got cancer. I went to hospital and they tell me, I don't even know at the time, having had the tests, that I had low red blood cells and no platelets. They might have, but none of it computed to a point of the seriousness of the situation. And I don't know if I was in denial as to what I was experiencing. The word cancer actually never even came up. I don't know when, to be honest. It was always lymphoma. And it's interesting how we reflect on language and words, right? And what we attach to them. It still had a very medical, scientific terminology and language. So it didn't have so much emotion to it. It's like autoimmune hemolytic disorder. When you speak to doctors, right? They give you in talking language, and you just go, "So what is that?" Right?
That's a big word I don't understand.
Exactly. And so that didn't necessarily have that sinking moment. It's only afterwards I think I've reflected on a few moments. I think, okay, I always feel like it's benefit, but it always helps to share stories. I was on a charity bike ride with a wonderful group of people. We do raise funds for a children's hospital in Jerusalem, and one of them, the guys, is a doctor, and it was soon after I went on that. I had my diagnosis. It was this extraordinary year in 2022. I'll always look back on it as being landmark. And so I went, I'm jumping around here, but it's a conversation, right?
No agenda here, mate. No agenda.
So I was diagnosed, started chemotherapy in April 2022, went through it for 5 months. Somehow, and this is why I can look back and go, my body was amazing. In November that year, I went on a 4-day charity bike ride. It's like 4 days in the desert. I do it each year. The wonderful, most incredible, soul-nourishing experience I can do. You're just surrounded by people who just want to do good. So that's the context. Anyway, so I was like in the middle of one day's ride, and as you do when you're riding, you're just chit-chatting, and I was telling this guy, wonderful guy, Herman, about my story, and he's a doctor. I remember this really well. It was the first time I told him my numbers on the red blood cells and platelets, and he told me, he goes, "Ashley, I've never had anyone survive that." And it hit me retrospectively now what I'd gone through, that actually it was so touch and go. And it was only then, it was like maybe a sort of, what do you want to call it, a sort of regressive feeling of like, holy fuck, and feeling the seriousness of what I went through and then what I have. And I'm trying to remember the second part of the question, which was like, how does this make me feel now?
Yeah, like how has that, I guess, impacted you over to where you are now? I guess your outlook on life now.
In a million different ways. Okay, I'll talk to one because it's very recent. I met with someone a week ago who's been through a very similar journey in terms of the type of cancer and the experience he went through. I was introduced to him 3 weeks after I was diagnosed, because through a mutual friend, this guy Danny said, "Oh, would you mind speaking to Valentin? He's a really close sort of work friend or professional colleague, and he's just been diagnosed, and he's stuck in New York. He's from Spain, Madrid, and he's going through maybe similarly what you went through, and perhaps you could help him." And we spoke on the phone, and it was a wonderful connecting sense of, I can help you because I can share where I've been and I can empathise with you, which is all you probably want at that point. And it was, I didn't realise, but the reason why I'm calling this out is because I met with him for the first time a week ago. We've been in touch through WhatsApp. He lives in Madrid, and we've been wonderfully sharing our experiences of going through recovery. And how are you? How's your checkup? How are you feeling? Are you fatigued? Are you tired? How are the kids? Da, da, da. So this is a roundabout way to answer your question. I met with him on last Monday and had the most extraordinary, connecting, beautiful, open, vulnerable conversation. And one of the ways that he was sharing it's changed his life, and it started to dawn on me. And I was actually going to think about bringing it into the answer of what does success mean. Is that we reflected on, it's nearly like, if today's your last day, are you going to leave this earth at peace and happy? And if you can go about every day like that, how wonderful is that? In the spirit of no regrets, you've been grateful for what you have in your life, and you tell the people that. You know, if it's a close friend, or if it's a relative, or it's your partner that you're grateful for, and you've told them that, and by reverse, there are people in your life that you're going, I really wish I had said X, or said sorry, or can we clear the air on something? What a way to live your life. And it's been a guide, and even I've reflected on some things from that conversation of going, that's the clean slate at best, or the nourishing place I would love to be. To now we're getting really deep. It's sort of saying being comfortable with death. And I can call it out of like going, I have no regrets. And it's this reminder of, tell the people what you feel. Tell them you love them. Tell them you're grateful for them. Tell them and be thankful. And his name's Valentin. Shout out to him because he's a wonderful man. And he's another example of, I think we might have spoken twice in our life and we've met once, but I've got this extraordinary connection as like not dissimilar to how we're feeling of going on number of times we've actually had contact on one hand of how this reminder has then given me this way to say, what I wanted to bring up, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I'm back again. He said, I wanted to meet you because I really wanted to genuinely thank you for that 10-minute conversation that I had with you whilst I was in hospital on the day after I was admitted in New York, because it was priceless. But I really wanted to make sure that before I leave this planet, I had the chance to come and meet you and thank you. Wow. And I'm like, I was nearly like, I was getting emotional, but it was the beautiful way in which he modeled what he was saying. It's like, if there's people you want to acknowledge and thank and be grateful for, or say you love, or then do it. But then do it wholeheartedly. Do it with intent. Make a point of it. And wow, I just felt after this all, and we've connected afterwards, and he helped me with some things, and I helped him with some things, and they shifted, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to speak to that person, or he's going to, make sure he tells that person something. And both of us left. It was like, wow, what a way to live your life. I mean, it puts a bit more depth to things like live with gratitude. Clear the air, or clean the slate. But it was a spirit of, again, I suppose this connection I had with him of, I couldn't. He said he couldn't, and I don't suppose I could have had that kind of conversation with anyone else. He said, like, we've had a conversation. There's things I've told you that I wouldn't be able even to tell my wife. So, roundabout way of saying, how's it changed the way I'm living? In that sense, as I say, it puts more depth and richness about that phrase of like, live your life as if today's your last. This is what I'm experiencing through my whole journey, particularly through cancer, is there are so many cliches we have live with in life. They're cliches for a reason, because they are powerful and they have meaning and they're common and they resonate with a lot of people. But I don't know how much we really understand the true depth and priceless value of them. Therein is one of them. Live your life as if it's your last. But what does that really mean? And we talk about things like bucket lists and I really wish I'd, whatever, seen Queen live. That's one of mine. But no, it's like deeper, really the real shit. What does that really mean?
Wow, I think what comes out of me, I think, because I think we spend so much of our lives going through and not accepting. Listen, whatever way we're looking at it, when none of us are getting out of this game, right? We're all gonna die. Yeah. Whatever happens, that's gonna happen. Okay, so the realization of that is just how you spend, like, Stephen Bartlett's book speaks about it, about the chips on your day, and like you've got a certain amount of chips. You've got 4,000 weeks by Oliver Berkman, which talks about this is the amount of time we've got. Where are we spending our time? What are we doing? And I think it's back to that point of just going, am I getting up every day, living in alignment with my values? Okay. If I can rest my head on my pillow that night, going, I have done that. Today I've done that. And on a daily basis, I'll do that. Be a good person. Do them things. I'm living a life in alignment with my values. When my time comes, whenever that may be, can I be at peace with myself, knowing that I've, to the best of my ability, I've lived my life in alignment with values. That for me is quite a freeing feeling of peace with the fact that if I was to die tomorrow, I feel like I've done that. I think that's what I've just being at peace with that, from what you've said and what that story and how you are. It's trying to just get to that point of being at peace on a daily basis when you rest your head on a pillow, that what you've done today is okay.
I think it's also where I'm curious about is this. What I'm feeling is this sense of like, live by your values, be at peace, when you rest your head on the pillow. And it talks to like what I was just saying, is going, but then what does that really mean? Does that, and maybe for a lot of people that lands and it resonates, and they maybe have their values written on a wall, and their understanding and feeling and conceptualization of what peace really means lands. I don't know. But I think this is speaking a lot to my work of like, how do we share this stuff in a way that's relatable, that's practical, that seamlessly integrates into your life, that you don't have to question and go, oh, when you might have decided what your values are, but do they really speak to you in a way of going, and therefore I show up in the world this way? It's like what we talked about. It's having toolkits, cheat sheets, hacks, all that type of language for me speaks to, this is easy to integrate, to live, right? And this is what I'm leaning into, of going, particularly my work of asking for help, is to make it natural, make it easy, make it seamless. Because as soon as you bring your brain in, it becomes like a cognitive load thing, and you're going, I want to live with peace every day. Okay, I'm going to live with peace every day. And you could say that a million times as a mantra, but
unless you're embodying it and embracing it,
in a way that's practical, right? So it could be grateful, do a gratitude practice, and be like, okay, I'm grateful for, and it's this guide to go, how can we help people do that in a way that helps them embody it and feel it, and not do it as a sort of monkey brain type, like, yeah, I'm grateful for my wife, I'm grateful for my kids, I'm grateful for the roof of my head. Would you feel it? Is it it's that whole sense of like moving from lip service to embodiment to feeling. So this wonderful mantra of like, yeah, live your life as if it's your last, live your life today as if it's your last, or go to bed with your head on the pillow feeling at peace. Okay, but there ways in which we can help people, as I said, embody it and feel it. And that goes back to what I'm saying, is that experience I just shared with you of getting a greater sense of what that really means, is to live your day, live your life as if today's your last. Okay, so who is it I want to tell something to, or what is, or this sense of embodiment? When I think of so-and-so, what's the energy? What's the emotion? And if it's not quite right, being curious as to what's not quite right about it, and then what might you be able to do to alleviate that? And I tell you, it'll be walking on air.
Mate, wow. This has been such a wonderful conversation in so many ways. I'm sitting here contemplating. There's so many things. We're going to need to get you back for an episode 2, I think. We'll go over for some more. But there's a couple. Talk about practical. There's a couple of things I want to, as we're coming towards it. There's a couple of things I do want to mention. Like, from a practical point of view, I want to relate this back to the asking for help side of stuff. Someone listening now that's maybe in that thing, feeling lost, stuck, wherever they are on their journey, what one bit of advice could you give them to go that why they should go and ask for help and how to go about it?
Gosh, the why, I think therein lies that's the deep question, that's the challenging one. I think the advice I would give is a few things, and this is the invitation to the listeners to go. It's got to land right for you. It's got to feel right. And there's a few invitations of going. It's okay to ask. A very simple one that I've learned. It plays into a bit of psychology of tell yourself it will go okay. So if you're gonna if you've got to that point of going, well, okay, I want to ask someone, I don't know, let's try and keep it in every day, because if it gets to difficult mental health stuff, maybe it's a higher barrier to entry. But let's start with every day. So if going, okay, I want to ask someone for a lift to the airport, a few tips might be, well, tell yourself it will go okay, right? There's this self-fulfilling narrative, and it plays into psychology of like, if you tell yourself it will go right or wrong, you're right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it plays into, I don't know if people believe in this, but it's like you put out an energy that people pick up on, whether it's literally or the universe. That might be number one. The other one that's come to me recently, which was really powerful from a conversation with someone we both know, Dan Kaplan. He gave an example of where he was in a difficult place and he reached out for help. But he reached out to a few people. So why am I highlighting this? Is because it's nearly like hedging your bets. If you're I just need to talk to someone. And I realise this, I've been in dark places before. It's that moment that really counts. And I can talk to a personal experience of going, yeah, when you reach out and then someone does come back to you, but it's a few hours later or the next day, it's like, well, no, not being harsh upon them, but that wasn't the moment that I needed help to talk to someone. So one tip, if it is we're trying to talk to the space of mental health and men and some of the difficulties they might be going through, this is a roundabout way of saying a tip of where going, your first small step, so when it's small, hopefully it feels easier, is to have the bravery just to reach out to someone and say, can we chat? And use language that works for you. That feels empowering, not heavy. Okay, I'll bring it up. You might have heard this, and it came through something I've listened to from Simon Sinek, who I work with and admire. There's a codification that helps people like reach out for help. So using language that feels empowering, not heavy. So yours is like, "You're right, mate," as a permission. And then Simon Sinek has talked about this research that shows that when people just need help, they can be shifted out of their dark space simply by 8 minutes. It's proven that the psychology, all it takes is 8 minutes to be heard, to be listened to, for someone he calls like sitting in the mud with you. So he has this codification between him and his close friends. It says like, "Have you got 8 minutes?" Which is really powerful because it feels neutral versus reinforcing the heaviness that you're in when you might say, "Oh, can you help? I'm struggling." That's really hard for anyone to say, right?
Yeah.
So, roundabout way of saying, try and find the phrase that works for you, and maybe agree it with your 3 or 4 or 5 closest friends. When you're saying X, it means Y, right? If you got a minute, means I'm struggling and I really need to talk to someone. So, and then another tip would be have that group where you've got a few people to reach out to at that very moment, because then you can at least hedge your bets a bit of going, if there's 4 close mates and you send that message out to 4 of them, you're more likely to get one person to come back and give you the help you need. And I've been there, and this is my lived experience. I'll talk very openly and honestly. It's like I've learnt the experience of, I send it to one person, I'm sitting there waiting, and of course they're not rejecting you. It's like life's in the way, they're at work, or they're a parent, or they've got things that they just can't be there for you at that time. But that's you selfishly and honestly going, but I need help now, this minute. If you were sitting next to me, brilliant, and I could talk to you, but I need a proxy for that now. So it's a conversation. So to alleviate that, it'd be like, well, try and have 4 or 5 people in your life you can have that permission, to go back to what we talked about, where you can go, can I talk to you? Because that's from my own lived experience. If we're looking at mental health and people in difficult places, struggling, dark places, this is, I think, as well as I do, the help that you're really asking for is to be seen, to be listened to, and the most simplest form of that is a conversation.
And I know you referenced Simon Sinek and a couple of things with that. Like one other that talk around the 8 minutes, but and also like you said, there's an inherent thing within men that we feel like we need to fix something. Sometimes we haven't got to fix it. We've just got to, as he references, right, sit in the mud. Sometimes I just want you to don't have to say anything. Just come and sit.
Just listen. Don't
listen.
fix.
Yeah. And that's such an important message. I think we, as soon as someone reaches out, you feel like. You feel responsibility to go, I'm going to go and fix it for you. You don't need to do that. I think that's such an important message that I've taken away from my journey, my lived experience, my discussions around this subject so many times is exactly that. I think it is just, and he articulates it brilliantly in that Simon Sinek, just sit in the mud with someone. I think that's important. And there was a quote that I really love that you posted from Simon Sinek, which says, fulfillment comes when you do something to help someone else. Just because we were talking about Simon Sinek, I saw that come up and I was like, that's brilliant. But what does that? What does that mean to you? Like that phrase, I guess, that quote.
The reason why I reposted it, because it speaks to the heart of what I do, and I think I remember how I reposted it was this reminder of why does it give us fulfillment it plays to when you help someone else, all the beautiful things that we have as human beings with each other, as in, it's not about you, it's about them. It's an act of service. It's supporting a fellow human being. But from what I've experienced and what I've now read and understood is that why is it fulfilling for you? Because it plays to you and your identity as someone who wants to feel for himself and be seen as someone generous, as someone helpful, as someone that has value that can lift someone else. So it's a strange reversal of actually it's a selfish act to offer help to someone else, because it reinforces your own identity as someone that has utility, has value, has something to offer that improves and lifts someone else. And then I took this to the next level of to remind people that here is the gift, to give that chance to someone else to experience fulfillment. It takes you to ask for help. So you can get the fulfillment flywheel going, but if you can be brave, you can be the catalyst. Not only by offering help, but by asking for it.
Brilliant. That's why it's called the gift of help, right?
There you go.
Mate, thank you so much. This has been just an absolutely wonderful conversation, as I knew it would be, and I'm so grateful for your time, and it's been magic. Thank you.
It goes both ways, and it's the beauty of having conversation, having vulnerability. It creates this gift that we have of connection and helping each other, because I'm coming out of this lifted and fulfilled.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast, as we know. So these are my storytelling cards. I can't wait to get you to one of our dinners or lunches where we use these, but choose a card, any card, and then pass it back to me. I'll read this out. Okay. Is there a dream you've set aside that still calls to you? What stands in the way of pursuing it now?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Is there a dream you've set aside that still calls to you? What stands in the way of pursuing it now?
Wow. Well, what's most present as you're asking that question is what I do with my work. So the dream would be, okay, let's make it honest, that asking for help is as innate and natural as breathing, as normalized as giving someone a present and receiving it. What's stopping me, gosh, this is going deep, is me embodying and practicing that myself. Because I realise once I've been able to do that, then I can justifiably and confidently model that authentically and inspirationally to everyone else.
What is stopping you, though,
from embodying it and living it out?
Yeah.
It speaks to everything we've been talking about. It's for me to embrace and be comfortable with the uncomfortable emotions that hold me back from doing it. And this is beautifully, with that question card, embodying what I'm trying to do, is get to the heart of living the most liberated, free life of possibilities by being comfortable with the uncomfortable emotions that hold me back from asking for help. Because then it's just, there's such a amazing world of possibilities for myself, and then model it to everyone else to then also have this life free of what's holding them back.
What a wonderful way to finish, mate. Thank you again. This has been truly magic. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And that, as they say, sir, is a wrap.